Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out, thanks and appreciation to Henrik86, Muted, Dicker Skeptic, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Chris Hillman, NA Literalist, Steve ALM, Maria Neelands, David Robinson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As the Earth, Nathan Thompson, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Missouri Bear, Liam Nedrick, Dank, Erwin Jennisons, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Joshua Balsimo, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Felix Hung, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, God Rockin', Kirsten Smith, Tina Baker, Alexander Main, and David Wayne Foster. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now we are joined by a couple of people in both Discord and G+, so I'll raise the mic on them and you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Less oxygen, but just a gradient.
There's oxygen, and then there's argon, and then nitrogen. Argon, nitrogen, remember, they both take up the most amount of the atmosphere. Oxygen, since it disappears, argon and nitrogen don't, because they're lighter than they dissipate much higher than oxygen. This means, fundamentally, that there are layers to the atmosphere. As if you take
but you still have to have pressure.
I know, but the same as...
It's going to take you right back to the end. What is it pressing upon, Jacob? And you can't just say gravity.
I know, I can't. Same as if you take a cup of water and you pour oil in. Oil finds its level above water, and water finds...
Okay, great.
Gas works like fluids. It's not a fluid.
No, it doesn't work like fluids. I don't think it works like fluids. Gas moves at high speeds to fill a container.
Yes. So then how come it's not filling the dome?
What do you mean it does? You have gas pressure. You have pressure here on Earth. We're breathing.
I know there's gas pressure here on Earth, but why is there not the same gas pressure above us?
You're talking about it being equal. You're talking about the whole thing being an equalized system. Because it's just not. You got to go back. You have to go back to the cycles. Everything's being cycled. Everything's being produced at ground level, going up.
You're assuming that
there's just less on a mountain. That doesn't mean anything.
I'm just talking about oxygen. When you go up on top of a mountain, there's just less oxygen. That doesn't mean that there is less every other gas. There's still the same gas pressure, just not as much. So that means that the other gases should,
help me out here, Nathan.
Doing fine, Neil. You don't need any help.
My son's saying we should be filled up. If there's been mankind for 6,000 years here, should be filled up. That's what you just said.
I said that we've been producing gases for 6,000 years. I know there's cycles, but how are they not filling up the available space?
But they are, because they're pressing something. If you had a ball Earth, they wouldn't be. It would be all just sucked out. We wouldn't have.
It's really going about what you guys believe. I'm playing devil's advocate. I believe in the flat Earth now, or whatever.
Okay.
If there's a dome above us, how is it not being filled up by gas?
Nobody ever said dome, but it's pressing on something.
Firmament.
Walls of a container.
Walls of a container. You can't. Obviously, there can't be flat Earth according to if there's no dome above us, because then obviously the vacuum would suck up all the gas. So
yeah,
how come
that's a good point, that
this gas isn't being sucked up by the less gas? It's almost like
I think you're talking about gradient.
It can't be gradient.
It probably gets vented. The container probably gets vented somehow.
Vented? We have gas cycles. What are you talking about, vented?
Vented with a V.
Yeah,
V
I heard
for
what you
Victor.
said. We have gas cycles. It doesn't need to be vented.
You can't just say gas cycles, Nathan. That's
Why not?
Sense.
Why not? So I can just say gas cycles because they're real.
Yes, but it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, so I can just say it then. And it does actually make sense, is real, does happen. Means we don't need ventilation because we've got cycles in the contained system that we must be in to have gas pressure. Cycles.
So go on, explain how the cycles mean
Why?
that
Sorry,
the pressure
why?
doesn't increase.
Why? So that I can, what, prove further that we haven't got a sky vacuum? Because those cycles wouldn't be taking place if there was a sky vacuum. So why do I need to explain this? The sky's not a vacuum. This is the point that I almost intervened with Neil. Because at the point that you start asking the question, well, how do the cycles... Who cares? So the sky's not a vacuum then. I'm not sitting here with religious texts and television programmes telling people that the sky's a vacuum. I'm not spending 8 million a day on convincing people that the sky is a vacuum. So why should I explain anything to do with the sky or how gas works? The sky is not a vacuum. That's the end of the argument. You want me to explain it now you realise the sky's not a vacuum? Oh, that's nice. Well, you're in the same boat as me then, aren't you? Because I don't know, and you don't know, but we know it's not a vacuum.
Okay, you don't have to explain. No worries.
No, I don't. That's right. I'll give you the same example I've given a couple of times before. Vacuum is
I've
the
just
brand
said you
name.
don't have to explain, Nathan. You don't have to
I know,
go
and
on
I'm going to
about
explain
it.
why I don't need to explain. In the same way, Thunderfoot...
Well, I'm going to stop listening to you.
Well, then just put yourself on mute and shut up. So, like Thunderfoot debunks a claim that you can dry clothes more efficiently with a vacuum.
Why do you keep going on about
So you're not going to
Thunderfoot?
shut up. So you're not going to stick your fingers in. I'll stick them in for you. Bye-bye, you're not taking part in the conversation anymore. Now you're in a different room. You don't want to listen, but you do want to interrupt constantly. Now you don't take part. Simple. So, Thunderfoot describes... Hey, 10th man.
Good morning.
Good morning. Describes how he can... Who's causing feedback? Is that you, Neil? Steve, can you pop yourself on mute? Thunderfoot describes how a vacuum-powered tumble dryer isn't as effective as they're claiming. Yep, and he demonstrates it with a practical example. He creates his own little vacuum chamber and shows the effectiveness of it and demonstrates how theirs isn't really what it claims. Now, he's debunking their claims. Does he need to produce an actual working prototype to make it work in the efficient way they say it does in order to debunk it? No. He can just take a steaming dump on their claim and walk away laughing like I'm doing about the sky vacuum. I don't have to explain gas pressure cycles at all. I don't have to explain what the container is at all. I don't have to do any of that. I just need to say the sky is not a vacuum as claimed at the cost of 58 million a day. So that's an outstanding claim that 99% of the Western world are under. The sky being a vacuum called outer space. Well, no, it's not. It defies natural law. Oh, what's that you say? I've got to tell you what it is. No, I don't.
So, he wouldn't let you talk.
Again?
I said Mr. Kirby wasn't going to allow you to talk.
He said he didn't want to listen. And then rather than taking my advice, which is, okay, sit yourself on mute and don't say anything, he decided that he was going to interrupt my example. Now he's come back in the room like he thinks he's going to be here for any of the show. He's not.
Well, he came to your show. Now you want to talk, and he's going to prevent the show host who runs the show from talking. Is that even proper?
It's a delusional idiot. He thinks that him as an individual matters when I've got a bloody audience. Oh, you're not going to listen, Mr. Individual? Then shut up. Oh, well, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to stop an audience listening to this. No, you're not. No, you just get removed when that happens. No, it's not tolerated that because you don't want to listen, that means you're going to stop me from talking? No, I don't think so. Yeah, Rumpus manages to figure it out. Stick your fingers in your ears. Yeah, that's fine. No worries. I'll say my piece without you listening. You don't have to listen to me. My audience will be listening regardless.
Their behaviors are amazing. I was listening to, just prior to coming on, I haven't finished at all, but Spurs on Fight the Flat Earth with that PhD professor. Man, what a great job Spurs did. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about it today. Anthony Riley did a piece on it, which was fantastic. And Emma UK is going to do a piece on it tonight at 9 p.m. your time. And I'm sure it'll be brought up. But Spurs, hats off to you. This guy with his PhD and Fight the Flat Earth himself are just condescending on Spurs for asking good questions. It's so embarrassing for them.
Oh, it's
but
brilliant.
That's their only tactic.
Oh, it's brilliant. Because while he might feel that in a one-to-one conversation in his nice little closed environment that he's normally discussing these matters with people, he can tell somebody that it's obtuse to suggest that you actually adhere to the scientific method, bearing in mind that non-adherence makes any claim that's using the word science a pseudoscience claim. He claims it's obtuse to ask for the steps in the scientific method as per Spurs. No worries. You're in a public arena, mate. We can all highlight just how disingenuous you are. Now, you've dipped your toe into a little pool that you thought might be lukewarm water. Well, it's not. It's boiling acid. And we are that acid.
A great example. Great example. He even brought you up, by the way. You and the Sleeping Warrior together.
Yeah. He thinks that I have somehow got claims over the scientific method because I detail it here when fundies like him claim science. No, mate, it's not my method. It certainly isn't Sleeping Warrior's method. It's just a method of empiricism to establish cause. What a shock. He was claiming cause and was asked about the scientific method given that he claimed science. Oh, and he didn't have any, did he? Because he's a pseudoscientist now, isn't he?
Well, in a short statement, the scientific method is to find the cause of an effect. Yay or nay?
Yeah, the cause of a natural phenomena, aka effect.
And he said that the cause was he buried it.
I thought when he was talking about burying it, he was talking about him establishing his ivy. So he was specifically asked by Spurs what his ivy was, and he described going and burying stuff. Well, that would be in response to a question about IV. Let's not use... Yeah, independent variable. That which you assume causes the effect. So Spurs asked him, what is your presumed cause? He then detailed burying stuff. Right?
Right. Amazing. And Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, including the professor with the PhD, were trying to say that the scientific method is not entirely a study in the natural world. And I went to the dictionary, and no matter where I went, it said study of the natural world, not man-made.
Yeah, as I say, he's perhaps got nervous. He got very riled, and so he should, because he's being exposed by Spurs as a pretender clown pseudoscientist. So he should get angry. You've got a lot to worry about, mate.
He did get angry. He called Spurs a buffoon. He said he's the authority. He's the one with the PhD. Basically, you have nothing to tell me or add. And then he goes on to explain in a very funny but preposterous way what the scientific method was by admitting that he's the cause.
Yeah. It's wonderful in a, like I say, a one-to-one scenario when he's telling next man what's what, based on his PhD and authority to tell him what's what. However, when you broadcast to a public audience, you then get held to task by people like us, who say, no, Mr. PhD, you don't get to tell us what's what when we are dealing with empirical methods that give you an established cause once you perform an experiment that you haven't got. We'll tell you that, and we'll cite source and humiliate your dumbass, because you think you're an authority, and that's the problem in the modern society. People with a PhD think they can tell you what's what. No, mate. You won't be telling us anything. You'll be held to task on whether or not it's a just-so story you've made up, telling you that you're the authority and you can tell me what's what. based on nothing but your stories. Well, Spurs is a little bit sharper than that. Spurs asked you what actually was the cause that you'd assumed and then verified, and you hadn't got it, making you a pseudoscientist. You used to be able to assert your authority with your PhD. Now you're being told you're a pseudoscientist. And let it be clear who's telling him. Flat earthers are telling these pretender clown pseudoscientists who've lied to the Western world that they are absolutely not in authority because of their consensus viewpoint and bit of paper that they hang on their wall. Science is an empirical method and you don't have it, pseudoscientist.
That's it.
The
Anyone
arrogance
else in
level.
Discord?
Say again?
Anyone else in Discord?
Yes, loads of people are along to me rant.
So what was that all about? Spurs was on a show and the guy wouldn't go through the scientific method?
Guy was brought on as a surprise guest. And the guy asserted his authority as a PhD and demanded that Spurs accept his authority.
Oh, he's got the wrong guy then.
Yeah, Spurs asked him about the scientific method and he was told promptly that that's Nathan Oakley and Sleeping Warrior's method. Well, for a start, we were educated. All of us were educated in 5th grade about this method, number one. Number two, it was brought or resurfaced or brought to my attention by Quantum Eraser. So he's the prevalent factor in pointing out what science is. It's very well documented, I might add. It's definitely not any of our method. It's a well-established empirical method that's benefited humanity by establishing cause empirically. And he doesn't have that. So he's going to get very defensive and tell people how his PhD means he can tell you what's what. And Spurs was quick to point out that he doesn't have the method. Now, he had his little minions around him, the guys that had brought him in as a witness that nobody knew about, asking Spurs about what acceleration was and telling Spurs how embarrassing it would be to get it wrong, despite the fact that he was told it was obtuse to ask for the actual adherence to the scientific method by a guy who's telling you he's in authority because he's got a PhD. No, mate. Nah. Things are changing. You're being told that you're not in authority by Spurs and me and 10th Man and anybody else who cares to comment on your outrageous arrogance when you don't have science.
Oh, I got it.
It's worth a listen to, Neil. It's very comical and funny how Spurs takes this guy down just being calm and asking questions.
Yeah, he cracks me up with that. He's so calm and just goes right back to the point.
That means that method didn't exist before you didn't discover, mate.
Did you hear that, Nathan?
I didn't. I'm half deaf at the moment. Say that again, despite everything.
That means that method, scientific method, didn't exist before you didn't discover.
Someone's going to have to repeat it. It
That
didn't
method
exist
didn't
until
exist
you
before
discovered it.
Hold on.
discovered
Preferably
it.
not two people at once. Hold on, despite everything. Can you just repeat what he said, 10th Man?
He said it didn't exist until you discovered it.
What didn't it? Oh, right, yeah, the scientific method's just completely unknown until Sleeping Warrior and Nathan Oakley came along.
Yeah, and all that presentation from QE, that's from his work, or it's from some scientist, it's from books, from internet. Where?
Exactly. He sat down, taken what they've said, they're just so stories, and put them through the ringer. And that ringer is a method that's well established. That's QE. Not me, not Sleeping Warrior. Yeah, we do it as well.
When people say how you don't understand, and I'm listening to the guy who is presenting the scientist, and they are saying that the guy how you don't understand. What he need to understand? That's
Stand under.
incredible.
Understand. Do you understand? Well, it means do you... Can you pop yourself on mute, 10th Man? You're making a whole load of background noise. It means do you accept my authority in this matter? Stand under what I have suggested. stand under what I've told you is correct because I'm a PhD. Do you understand?
If I, for example, say an argument that nobody made circumnavigation around Antarctica, that means if I need to prove that argument, that means that I need to go to around Antarctica to prove that.
Depends what you're proving. I mean, in that scenario, a what is question isn't capable of going through the scientific method anyway. You're talking exclusively about cause and effect relationships. Now, in that discussion, he's discussing what his causes of things are, with his begging the question of gravity, which on about 6 separate occasions that I could, off the top of my head, at least half a dozen occasions, he just begged the question. Well, because we've got this gravitational attraction, and then he inserts his example. So they know how to beg the question, all right?
Like with radius, it's the same.
Yeah, it's faith. We know we've got this force, therefore I'm going to presuppose it, and we'll go from there.
Yesterday, I asked in the evening exam, who calculated a radius, and he said to me, "You are stupid. Everybody calculated the radius." And I said, "How is that possible that everybody calculate? How we get that 3959 if everybody calculated? Who was the first man?" And he said, "Everybody calculated on the end," and that was the answer.
Yeah, Zanuck, Rumpus, various other people similar to them are in that position where they can just literally make up nonsense on the spot to get around an awkward question. How do you mathematically calculate something which you cannot see? Well, you can't is the actual answer. Well, anybody can then calculate it. It just sends it into absurdity, makes it so broad and vague that it's meaningless. But it's total nonsense. If it can't be measured and can't be seen, it can't be measured, and it... Go on, Neil.
And for me, will be, for example, when you debating, Nathan, when somebody tell you, you don't understand, Nathan, I wanted it in that moment you stop and say, can you say other people who also don't understand? Because they think when they are saying that you don't understand and other people understand, you know?
I was saying as long as you get within 5%, I guess it's okay.
Yeah, 5% of what?
The whole you don't understand thing is, again, a reasonably clever attack because it disseminates to the audience that the person who's making a good point actually really doesn't, quote-unquote, understand what's being said. Well, it's not true 90% of the time on their side of the argument because they don't have a response. So their response is, no, you don't understand. Not, no, I've not got a response to this very real problem of not being able to see a geometric horizon, formerly known as Earth curve. Therefore, if I can't see it, I can't measure it. He's going to say everyone can measure it.
Yeah,
Nathan, this is a good time.
Debating, I'm saying, some people tell you, you don't understand. In that moment, I wanted to tell that guy, really, but honestly, man, I don't understand you. I understand Nathan, but I cannot understand you. That's my point. I don't know what's with me, but, you know, I want to say that person, man, I don't know, maybe Nathan not understand you, but I don't understand you.
Yeah, projection, in other words. They don't understand how to answer a question that's unanswerable, so they'll tell you the exact situation that they're experiencing. Projection.
Yeah.
Or...
Okay, I almost had a clear air.
Go on.
I'm trying to get in here. All right, so on this topic, the radius. So how can you calculate it if you cannot see it, right? I mean, this is pretty basic. But they do tell us it's 3959 miles from the center to the surface. So how did you know it was 3959 if you're telling us at the same time you can never see it because of atmosphere? So if it was Al-Biruni or anybody else, what they ended up seeing was the horizon. And of course, there's only one horizon where the sky seems to meet the ground or the oceans or the seas. And if it's apparent, as it obviously is, and not actual place, how were they ever able to get the 3959? This is a very good back engineering the question to them. And now they're saying that it's because of optics and refraction. And then we say, everyone in chorus, welcome to Flat Earth.
Yeah, welcome to Flat Earth. That's our argument. But let me just break down one part of what you just said, though. So the bridge is the Al-Biruni bridge between the abstract and the real. So how do they calculate it? What is calculating something? Well, it's working in the abstract. Mathematics is abstract. It's not physical. It's not physics. It's not natural world. It's maths. Abstractions. So you're not talking about reality when you're talking about mathematics. And you can calculate anything about anything. It's an abstraction. It doesn't have to exist in reality for you to calculate something. Anthony Riley or Sleeping Warrior makes the example, if I've got 2 ice creams and you take 3 ice creams from me, how many ice creams have I got left? Well, -1 ice cream. But you can't have that in reality. It doesn't matter. It's an abstraction. It's mathematics. So who cares? It doesn't matter. It's not actually in existence, even though you're using a simile or whatever to suggest it with something that you can picture in reality. Well, in their example, there's this bridge between where they use an abstraction to derive a radius, that would be the mathematics, and what is claimed to be measured in reality. And that is the Al-Biruni measuring of the horizon that is claimed to be geometric if we have a sphere edge, formerly known as Earth curve. So you have this point in the narrative where it goes from abstractions, mathematics, into physical, the physicality of the world. And that's Al-Biruni making a measurement from his dip angle from a imaginary horizon at 90 degrees from his zenith to the horizon he sees when he's measuring it. Now that is giving him a geometric value, an abstraction that will later be used in argument to reify a position that doesn't exist. Well, if it doesn't exist, he can't measure it. But there's where you get that point in the narrative where you have the abstraction claiming to be in existence in reality. And we're at the point where we're saying, you can't measure it, and they tell us, well, no, it can't be measured, it can't be seen, because they're shying away from that bridge that we're highlighting doesn't exist. There is no bridge between the mathematical abstraction of Earth curve and the reality of a horizon that is not Earth curve, and we're being told so. So that's the thing I'm hopefully going to focus on more and more and more. It's a reification fallacy, making something which is abstract in mathematics exist in reality. And the story of Al-Biruni typifies that reification taking place in a narrative, i.e. he's reifying something which only exists in maths into something which is physical and can be measured, even though we're currently being told as a result of the Black Swan, it can't be seen, it can't be measured, it only exists in maths. And what's it? It is Earth curve, an abstraction, a reification fallacy. It doesn't exist in reality, it only exists in maths.
Yes, but now we say to them, in the past, prior to Black Swan, and prior to this nice argument you're putting together between physical reality versus math and abstraction, what was blocking the bottom of boats again?
An abstraction, a reification of an Earth curve that exists in a mathematical model. So what was blocking the boats for them was, as they told us, Earth curve. Well, what is Earth curve? Something that only exists in maths. So their mathematical reification of Earth curve used to block boats and buildings for them as religious fundies. In reality, there's 101 different things that can cause things in the distance to disappear completely or from bottom up. None of which are asserted by them. It's only Earth curve that causes things to disappear from bottom up. No other cause is ever asserted. If they say, no, we have refraction. No, they don't. They have geometric 7/6R, which they call, quote unquote, terrestrial refraction, or it's otherwise known as, quote unquote, standard refraction. Geometric refraction that requires an R-based horizon to derive this 7/6R. That would be the R value they don't have, can't measure, only exists in maths. So it's a circle jerk. But to answer your question, what was blocking boats and buildings for religious fundies that believe they live on a sphere? A reification of Earth curve via a mathematical construction that does not translate into physical reality and only exists in maths. In reality, as I say, 101 different things that we don't have to justify. We're not claiming, or it's causing all of that bloody noise despite everything. We're not claiming anything about the horizon. We can attempt to explain it, but we're not holding a religious fundy zealot meeting here where we dictate that the horizon's a physical sphere edge blocking boats and buildings because we've reified maths with it. So we don't actually have to explain it at all. We're put to task because the only assertion they have is Earth curves making things disappear as it goes over it. And what's it? Well, the thing that only exists in maths that I've reified into something that's causing this effect, that's got 101 other causes, including optics, not included in the maths, which they now use as a ham-handed get-out-of-jail-free card when it's not in existence in their maths. They've hijacked perspective and optics and called it Earth curve by way of mathematics.
Right. And if they're going to say standard refraction, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a death blow to them because it's 7/6 of the radius that they have a number to, which is 3959. And then they're going to qualify it with Andrew Thomas Young and with 1.32 miles versus 1.22. So they've already told us what this refraction will do to the actual horizon physical at 1.22 at an observer height of 1 foot. Correct?
Well, yes, but at that stage, they've then invented a second horizon. So then we've got a detachment from a horizon that's mathematical, geometric, and one that's visible, which they call apparent. Painfully redundant, all horizons are apparent. It's a visible location where the sky or land appears to meet the sky. Now, that apparent position is apparent because A, you can see it, apparent meaning you can see it, but B, not actual. The sky doesn't meet the land or sea. But it means you can see it, and that's what a horizon is. But at that point where you've described Andrew Thomas Young describing what he calls an apparent horizon, redundant, versus a geometric horizon, you've then got two horizons. Well, if the geometric horizon, the one that they're claiming the apparent, redundant horizon is based on, then you've got a second position where the sky meets the sea or land, but we don't see it. Therefore, it's not a horizon. We only have one. So at that particular point, he's then given you two horizons when we only have one. Go on, despite everything. You're trying to get a word in, because I can just hear you crackling constantly.
Yeah, the mic is cracking there. Okay, so, no, well said. But I'm looking at it from a different angle, and I'm not going to let them beg the question, obviously. But if they're going to say this stuff, I'm going to hold them to task. So I'm trying to form an argument by holding them to task on their measurement of refraction. It has to be based on R, which means they have to have their R correct.
I see.
Well, in doing
yes. In order to say it's been moved with respect to the curved Earth and the curved atmosphere that's being curved at the rate of the curved Earth with assumed the maths, then they've first got to have a measurement to that R value because the R value is in 7/6R. So if you're going to bend the atmosphere to bend the light around a bent Earth you've assumed, then you're going to need the R value to be provable by way of calculation, i.e. measuring to it. And his very description describes how you can't measure to it. So it falls apart.
Right. Right. So if you can never see it, you can't measure to it.
And therefore you can't base refraction on it, which is your point.
Thank you. That's good. Good summary.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Greetings, everybody. Alrighty then.
Hey, Owen.
Hello.
Got about the most least enthusiastic start from the Discord server I think we've ever had. Literally no one said hello.
Hello, Discord. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you very much for salvaging that introduction. Wonderful. Thank you. Very good to have you here. Any signs of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve?
Not even from an abstraction.
No, only from an abstraction.
Thank you for correcting me.
We were just discussing it in the pre-show. Anyway. Any signs of
under
axial?
some bridge.
The bridge? You want me to mention the Al-Biruni bridge again? I don't mind going through the Al-Biruni bridge if you want, if that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the pre-show, we were discussing the transition from the abstraction that is a mathematically based geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature. And that mathematical abstraction is reified into existence in argument as though it's the world we stand upon. But it only exists in maths. That would be the geometric horizon, as I say, Earth curvature. So there is a bridge, a transition from the abstraction that is the mathematics, only exists in the maths, Earth curve is a mathematical construction, to a claim that it exists in physical reality. Well, that's Al-Biruni, who is claimed to measure the geometric horizon. So it's at that stage that you have the transition from the abstract, only exists in maths, to the real. Al-Biruni is under the impression he is actually measuring a geometric sphere edge known as Earth curve. He isn't, because it only exists in maths and cannot be seen, cannot be measured to. But it is that point that the story of Al-Biruni is the verbalization of the reification from mathematical Earth curve to real Earth curve. When there is no real Earth curve, it only exists in maths. So Al-Biruni is that transition from abstract maths to physical real.
The geometric horizon, whatever that is, that word soup.
Word soup, word salad, Earth curve, you mean?
Yep.
So check it out on Ballbusters this weekend. We were covering Soundly's nonsense, and he was he was put to task and asked about this black swan, whether he was aware of it. And when it was explained that if the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3959, then every distance to horizon measurement can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Now that's the assertion that we have Earth curve. And his response to that was, oh, that's a load of old word salad about the geometric horizon. It's like, what, that thing that you thought you were measuring and taking photos of there, Soundly? That's Earth curve there, mate. What, word salad? Yeah, we agree. Total word salad, this whole nonsense about having an Earth curvature. Geometric horizon. No, we don't have one. It's just word salad. Only exists in maths, mate. Not really in physical reality. You weren't actually photographing it, numpty.
Yeah, they were the gardeners of that word salad. We're just making it now.
Yeah. Word salad gardeners. You were telling us all about how we used to see this mathematics of an R value, and now we're told we don't see it by your own bloody brethren.
So let me get this straight. He takes pictures of a bridge and says it's Earth curve. And then when you press him so it can match the actual radius of the Earth, he's saying the Earth curve is on. He says it's word salad. Correct.
He doesn't understand that the geometric horizon is the fundamental basis of his religion in an Earth that's spherical. When it was put to him with the actual mathematics of an Earth that's spherical, he said it was word salad.
Wow.
We're dealing with clowns. They don't even understand the tenets of their own religion. They literally don't understand what they believe in.
Yeah, he was gone for a minute. He was around back when, they used to call it Earth curve, and boats used to hide, be able to be hidden behind this physical Earth curve, right? Then he takes a little hiatus. He comes back, and all of a sudden, we're calling it the geometric horizon, and he thinks that's word soup. Meanwhile, all his boys have already told us we don't see this geometric horizon. What you used to call the Earth curve. Yeah, we don't see that anymore.
So wait a minute. He takes 3 years to go take pictures of Lake Pontchartrain.
You made it.
So he takes 3 years to take pictures of Lake Pontchartrain. He doesn't realize the argument has shifted. He comes back and they say, forget your pictures of Lake Pontchartrain. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
but it wasn't put to him like that. The claim based on his pictures doesn't exist anymore. The Earth curve that was claimed to be photographed by him only exists in mathematics.
Yeah.
Well, go on.
No, that's it.
Okay, moving on.
There's nothing more to say here.
Excellent. Well, might as well ask the question. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius? Feel free to pipe up, Discord.
Black Swan.
Very active Discord today.
I've got half of them on mute, to be fair. They've all joined since the intro.
Well, unmute them. Let's hear if someone's going to say something on this question.
Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
At best.
At best.
At best, the Black Swan would have debunked the R value. That would be a correct statement made by Mr. Sensible. Or let's take a few of the others. We cannot see the geometric horizon. We wouldn't expect to see the geometric horizon. The geometric horizon cannot be seen. The geometric horizon only exists in maths. We wouldn't expect to see the geometric horizon. Oh, so many beautiful quotes.
Yeah.
What happened to the sound effects?
At best, you will find more R's in the word soup.
There's a lot of R's in that word soup, Soundly. A lot of R's.
I remember the sound effects. We cannot see the geometric horizon.
Oh, my bad. It's like we used to call it the geometric horizon hand wave, as in Star Wars. These aren't the droids you're looking for. So we do not see the geometric horizon. They wave their hand and you go, oh, right, I see. That all makes sense now. What exactly was blocking boats and buildings again?
That's the Jedi mind trick, man. They tried to get us with the old Jedi mind trick.
No, it only exists in the maths. Oh, so it wasn't blocking boats and buildings then?
You're forgetting about optics, Nathan.
Optics. Welcome to Flat Earth. That would be our argument. Your maths is turned side on 90 degrees in Muppet vision, otherwise known as orthographic view, and the targets that you're looking at and claiming are blocked by Earth curve don't change in their apparent size. Now, if you move away from something, its angular size, its apparent size gets smaller. Things get smaller with distance. Now, that's ignored in Earth curve maths completely, because a 10-foot wall in Earth curve maths is 10 feet at 1,000,000 miles. Now, for this reason, their removal of perspective from their Earth curve maths, we get asked how we could have a horizon at all on a flat Earth. Because in their pea-brain minds, unless Earth curves get in the way, things never ever disappear with distance. Because a 10-foot wall, if you draw it in orthographic view with your side of your own head on the left-hand side and the target on the right-hand side, you can draw a line between those two things in side view when you can see the side of your own head, like the Earth curve maths. And you can write 1,000,000 miles on it, on that little line. And there's no horizon between the two things. Because that's how orthographic view works. Now that 10-foot wall at 1,000,000 miles is going to be virtually zero angular size. Infinitesimally small. Because it's so far away. Therefore you can't see it anymore. Your eyes aren't that good. You haven't got that big a hole in your eye to let the light from 1,000,000 miles in. But in their maths, it's still visible. Because it removes, I'll correct myself, hijacks the effects of perspective and calls them Earth curve. Now, I'll be the first to point out when they say, well, why would we have a horizon? Well, why would we see the side of our own head, like we do in your mathematics for Earth curve assertion, when hijacking perspective? because the sizes of your buildings are always the same feet and inches or meters value, regardless of the distance to them. So a 100-foot building's 100 foot, with you saying, why is 30 feet missing? Well, what about the angular size? It's got smaller. Oh, well, we don't need to account for that. We don't need to worry about that. It's geometry. Oh, right, requiring a geometric horizon, then, to be blocking this 30 feet, not accounting for angular size. It's Muppet vision. They don't have perspective in Earth curve maths. The whole thing's a joke.
May I add to that?
Funny how they always want to talk. I'm sorry, Tough Man, real quick. Funny how they always want to talk about angular size when it comes to the sun. But then when it comes to their curve math, nah. Let's not talk about that.
Let me add, thank you, Chocolate. Let me add to that the most recent responses since the Black Swan is that it doesn't work on the flat Earth. It doesn't work on the flat Earth. Well, I'm going to quote Andrew Thomas Young here, that all of his refraction calculations do work on the flat Earth because he says so. He says all of his, not some of it now, guys. He says all of his refraction calculations came from plane surfaces, flat Earth. And then he says, if you want to make it into a sphere, let's use some mathematics. So when you say refraction doesn't work on the flat Earth, that doesn't hold water whatsoever. That's the only place Andrew Thomas Young got his refraction. Optics.
Yeah, I'll translate that though. Their refraction only works on a globe because their terrestrial refraction, otherwise known as standard refraction, is 7/6 of the radius value. So their refraction only works on a globe because their refraction is based in mathematics, and so is their Earth curve.
So in order to save the radius they don't have, they change that radius they don't have. Right.
Right. Terrestrial refraction is the deglobifying formula to turn it back to a flat plane.
Right. So say that again, Nathan.
Simple logic is, can I say, Tentman, only one sentence?
Sure, go ahead.
The logic is what Waller is saying. What I understand, it's this. You cannot see geometrical horizon, but he is projecting 10 miles away because of refraction or whatever.
But why does the model describe the geometric horizon as
you can
the
see
visible
behind that horizon? Do you understand? That's the point of globers. They thinking that, at least I understand, Rumpus said 1,000,000 times that we have two horizons. That means that horizon is projected 10 miles away. And that people who has a logic need to understand that that's the science, that we see mirage, or whatever that is. The horizon we cannot see because it's projected 10 miles away. That's the only reasonable answer.
Have we pulled this out to death? Should we move on? Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No. Except for that nonsense you got on your screen.
It's been a long time since somebody enthusiastically said, yes, we do. On that one, isn't it? Long time.
It's one of the most beautiful parts of the nonsense, if you ask me, because it is so clearly a just so story. They even tell you themselves.
Yep.
But Nathan, look at that picture you got on your screen. Right. That's not proof right there?
It's like a little sun in our own Earth.
It looks like a jawbreaker I ate when I was 8.
Yeah, like a gobstopper.
Like a everlasting gobstopper. No, they were shaped like little men, weren't they?
I think they were like stars.
They're kind of like stars, I suppose, yeah. Little pokey things, everlasting gobstoppers. Nevertheless, any evidence of this self-perpetuating molten iron core that's supposed to be at the centre of this presupposed spherical Earth that only exists in maths?
No.
It exists in maths? How? Is there any calculation about it? Does it really exist in math, or is it just a just so story?
It's just a just so story.
Right. I don't think they even have a model for it, really.
It only exists in the maths. You made the same mistake 10th Man made earlier. Does it exist in the maths? Yeah, it definitely exists in the maths. Only exists in the maths.
Yeah, but can you show that maths to me?
Yeah, very easily. There's plenty.
Do they even have a model for it?
Yeah, if the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3959, then every distance to the horizon can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That would be the modus tollens, based on their assertion, with a radius of 3959. Or see any curve calculator.
Nathan, I only made that mistake earlier because I had multiple thoughts.
We were talking about the molten iron core, right?
Yeah, it's a presupposed spherical Earth with a radius of 3959, and their rhetoric and their story has that exact presupposed spherical Earth with a molten iron core. Now, you've asked, is it just a just-so story based on maths? Well, yeah, the reason you've got a core is because you've got a spherical Earth. And the just-so story is Theia smashed into us when we were a small planet and deposited its core, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. I think we may be talking slightly past one another, because I was talking about the molten iron core part. Like, where is that in the math? Or is that literally just, no, molten iron core, that a story tag that is tagged on to the R-based mechanisms for the globe and all that? You know, because where's the calculations? Where's the model for that? To me, it just seems like painting some stories.
Everything what is spherical inside is molten.
I can answer that. So there's a necessity based on their timeline. So based on their timeline, we shouldn't have a core at all. It should have cooled down already, based on how long they say it took for this nonsense world, based on presuppositions of R values and the lights in the sky having the same R values, and Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion giving us all this time and distance. Well, when they calculated all that out, we shouldn't have a core at all. Well, therefore, they had to invent a story to give us a bigger core, so it wasn't already cooled down, and enter Theia smashing into us and creating the moon with its debris. So yeah, that bit's just a just-so story for the mathematics that lead us to the core that's non-existent at this point in time, based on their story.
Right, okay. But I guess that the basic decisions on the temperatures of the core and what it's supposed to be, right, that is pretty much arbitrary. It's just wet finger work decisions, right?
If you were to say arbitrary in the maths, then no. I'm sure there's a very good reason within the maths that's an abstraction that isn't translatable to physical reality. There's probably a very good reason within the abstraction. Now, in terms of our physical reality, we don't have a sphere beneath our feet, and we definitely don't have a molten iron core that's been created by another planet smashing into us. Planets are nonsense. We're not on a planet, and the lights in the sky aren't planets. So it's just a complete load of old nonsense to justify a philosophical model. But yeah, the mathematics of it probably do have a justification that if, you know, I just don't want to leave that out there so someone comes along and goes, hey, in this mathematical abstraction, no, there's very, very reasonable reasons why we've come to the conclusion we've got an oversized core because of Theia. Here you go, here's all the maths. Here it all works in the abstraction.
All right. I was kind of hoping to pull a Glober out of the shed with that.
Well, you can by asking them to show it in physical reality. It's always finding that bridge, like we talked about with Al-Biruni earlier. Where does it go from reification from a mathematical construct, i.e. an abstraction, to claim to be in physical reality? If you can find that little bridge, and then just jump on it and see how flimsy it is, that's where you have a good laugh, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I want to find that 5% differential bridge right there. That's what I want to know.
Right. So
now
I'm
they get that 5%.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
Right. But I'm just, you know, with the Al-Biruni thing, it's like, yeah, I kind of want more. So who came up with these numbers for the molten iron core? What is that based on? Who basically determined that it was that? Just like who determined the distance to the sun, right?
Yeah, gotcha. You want to pin it to somebody. So in the same way as we can say, right, Huygens just decided that Venus was the same size as Earth.
Right.
Well, you can pin it on that dude, right?
Exactly. So I'm wondering who came up with the set numbers for the molten iron core originally. Because you do know about the supposed distances to the sun and all that, and even historically recorded how it all changed. Oh no, we got it more precise now, right? But I don't know any such stories about the molten iron core concept. None at all.
Anthony's fairly well versed. If Sleeping Warrior shows his head at some point, we'll Shows his face, rather. Just ask him. He knows all about it. Far more than I do.
Okay, I will. Thanks.
Any evidence of, where are we? Axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? No wheels, please.
No. Earth is stationary. Definitely.
No motion detected.
As he's come up several times already, Sleeping Warrior gave me a ring the other day and was... I think it's bugged him that he hasn't got a firm or as firm a grip on the Coriolis arguments as he would like. So there's been a few times where he's got in touch. One was yesterday. And he gave me an example of somebody who was arguing with him, talking about a plane and throwing a ball back and forth in the plane. And he was like, is this Coriolis effect? I'm like, no, it's not Coriolis effect, because Coriolis effect is what you observe. And the example, it could be of a plane seeming to curve because you're rotating underneath. So in other words, to have Coriolis effect in any example, you must be detailing what you see or what is seen from a spinning platform. Now, in the case of the claim that Earth is spinning, Earth is claimed to rotate underneath a plane, and therefore you see the curve of that path seeming to deviate from its straight path because you're rotating underneath according to the claim that Earth is spinning. Well, if you're looking up at a plane and seeing it seem to drift, seeming to curve when it's not really curving, that's really got nothing to do with what the plane's actually doing. It could be flying loop-de-loops. All that matters is that from your vantage point, it seems to drift when it doesn't. That's Coriolis drift. But it's the observation from the spinning platform. So to debunk the claim that spinning Earth even exists, you say, okay, fine, well, let's just take that as read. So I'm on a spinning Earth, and I'm looking up at a plane. And the plane's travelling straight, but from my vantage point, it looks like it's curving. It looks like it's taking a deviated path. It isn't. It's just the Earth rotating underneath the plane. And if the Earth's rotating underneath the plane for you to see it take a curved path, then the flight time must be reduced if it's travelling west. Because Earth's rotating underneath it so that I can see it seem to curve. Now, at no point in that description does it matter about how fast the plane's going, what direction it's taking, or anything. Just that I see it seem to curve from the ground that's claimed to spin underneath it. And if it's spinning underneath that plane, it's shortening that plane's flight time for me to have the Coriolis effect that Earth is claimed to have. Now, in reality, for me to see that curving plane, when it's not really curving, it's just me spinning underneath the plane, and the plane travelling over the top of something that's spinning, yeah, that must shorten flight times and does not. So that's the argument in its entirety, as concise as I can make it. So Sleeping Warrior says, is throwing a ball anything to do with Coriolis on the plane? No. Just you seeing that plane seem to curve. And if you are experiencing Coriolis from a spinning Earth, then the flight time's got to be reduced because you're watching a plane seem to curve as Earth turns underneath the plane. And it doesn't. No flight times are reduced. Doesn't matter what the plane's speed is, or its engines, or it's doing the loop-de-loop. Doesn't matter. Just that you turn underneath that plane, shortening the flight times to have Coriolis on a claim to be spinning Earth.
I was talking to one of my friends about this yesterday, and at the end of it, he asked me that very question. He said, wait a minute. So if what you're saying is true, how the hell could we ever get from California to New York if the Earth is spinning in that direction faster than the plane is moving? And I said, well, you tell me. How is that happening? They said, well, it doesn't. And I said, well, there you go. Welcome to Flat Earth. Simple as that.
Yeah, to have Coriolis effect on an Earth that's claimed to spinning, you've got to see things leave the claim to be spinning reference frame and deviate because they're not attached to it anymore. That's all Coriolis effect is. And if you're watching things seem to deviate because Earth's turning underneath them, then Earth's turning underneath them. So you lift off in a helicopter and Earth turns underneath it. That doesn't happen. You lift off your drone from the ground and Earth turns underneath it according to the claim that you can see it drifting. Well, drifting is drifting. It drifts away from you. Not because it's moving, because you're spinning underneath the drone. Does anybody ever experience this? No. Does Earth spin underneath planes? No. Does Earth spin under hot air balloons? No. Did Earth spin underneath Felix Baumgartner? No. Because Earth is not spinning. But the claim is we see Coriolis effect. which is us spinning underneath stuff and watching it seem to deviate. For example, Neil deGrasse Tyson says, ball gets kicked from claimed to be spinning reference frame, leaving it and entering the air. And anybody watching that ball from the stands, watch it seems to curve into the goal. Seems to curve. It's actually travelling straight, but Earth's turning under the ball, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Well, if it's turning under the ball because it's left the spinning Earth, then the plane is also leaving spinning Earth, and you can look up at the plane and go, oh, look, that plane seems to be curving, just like the ball Neil deGrasse Tyson claimed was curving, because we're spinning underneath it. Well, if we're spinning underneath a plane to see it seem to drift, then we're spinning underneath it, and that's bringing the continent it's travelling to when travelling west to it. That doesn't happen. Disproving that we spin. Because we don't have Coriolis effect. We don't observe it. It's a real effect. Just need a roundabout, and you sit on it, and you look at anything that's not on the roundabout. It seems to move. You look at a lamppost from a roundabout that's spinning. The lamppost seems to move. It's not. It's concreted into the ground, but you're spinning underneath it. That's Coriolis effect. Anything not on the spinning platform, like a ball with Neil deGrasse Tyson's example, it's left the spinning Earth, and therefore we see it seem to curve. It's really travelling straight, but we're turning underneath it. Like we'd be turning underneath an aeroplane, shortening its flight time, or turning underneath a helicopter, bringing a continent to it. None of those things actually happen. We don't have Earth-based Coriolis effect. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
I'm sorry.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No evidence for the distance to the sun.
No? Nobody going to parrot off Huygens without realising it? No? Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Keyword is pressure. And no, to have pressure, it must be pressing upon something.
So when I did my intro this morning for the pre-show, I opened the mic on the Discord server, and Neil and his son are having a full-on discussion about this. It was really interesting. At one point, he's like, help me out, Nathan. I'm like, you don't need it. You're doing really well. But he's just discussing it with his son, and his son's disagreeing. You don't need a container. And then when we get to the point of concession, he's like, well, if we've got a dome, what about us not constantly increasing the pressure? In other words, the concession that, well, we must have containment to have gas pressure gets brushed past with a load of questions for us. And me, I had to launch into. I don't have to prove it.
That was a continuation from this morning, because we were on 24/7, and I was having that same discussion with Neil and his son. And yeah, he's arguing for why doesn't the air pressure fill the container. I'm saying, well, how do we have any of the pressure in the first place if in your model we don't have a container? But, you know, obviously they don't like to focus on that.
No, they want to brush past it and start asking us questions about the dome that we pump 52 million a day into proving and getting people to be convinced we've got, even though we make absolutely no claim of it, beyond the second law of thermodynamics assertion that we must have containment to have pressure. Just a natural law, just a law of nature.
Yeah, I
It's
wish that
interesting.
my son it's in layers.
Go on, Neil.
Whoever that was on 24/7 told my son that the gas is in layers. That was a big mistake.
Yeah, layers or otherwise, to have a gas pressure gradient, you still require containment. We have dynamic systems here. Again, this isn't a necessary requirement. So in the first days of us getting to grips with this argument, again from QE, big kudos to QE, he wouldn't answer this question. It's like, why do I have to tell you why we have a gas pressure gradient? We don't have a sky vacuum. Let's just hear you concede. We don't have a sky vacuum because without the container there can be no pressure, end quote, Conspiracy Cats 2019. So you must have containment.
Yeah, that's the position I'm taking.
Yeah, you don't have to explain what the sky is or how gas works. There's no necessity to do that. Just debunk the sky vacuum. Again, once this was all concluded, do you have anything to add to that before I waffle on, Neil?
No, I'm good.
So in the pre-show, I gave the example which I've given a few times now, Thunderfoot. Now, Thunderfoot, I'm calling out because he's punting something, he's selling something, he's selling the religion of heliocentrism, the globe earth cult. He's punting that. Now, he might not be aware, but hopefully few people will let him know. that he's punting something, selling something. He's a shill. So anyway, the shill that is Thunderfoot debunks things like vacuum tumble dryers, and he gives practical demonstrations and mathematics to show how their claims are false. Now, does he have to then produce a working prototype that shows how it is possible to effectively and efficiently dry clothes with vacuum power? No, he does not. He can just take a giant dump on the claim that the product does what they say it does and show how it can't do what they say it does. He doesn't have to actually do what they claim. He doesn't have to prove anything. Likewise, when it's claimed that the sky is a vacuum, I can say, no, that stands in violation of natural law. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas would fill the space. It's entropy. Gas just moves at high speeds to fill the available volume it has to fill. And if the sky is a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, as you claim, it's a huge amount of area for that gas to fill. Gas just moves at high speeds and doesn't stop until it hits something. So it's just going to fill that volume if it's a sky vacuum, so it can't be. Oh, well then prove the dome. What are you talking about? I haven't made any claim about a dome. Second law of thermodynamics dictates that the gas would fill the space. It's called entropy, so the sky's not a vacuum. Let's have a concession? Nah. No, you've got to show me how you would dry clothes in a practical vacuum that does work. You need to show me a working tumble dryer. No, I don't. I don't need to tell you what the sky is.
Well, they show us every time NASA does something, or SpaceX, or any one of these sub-agencies, their supposed astronauts are going into the vacuum of space, and they have to have an enclosed capsule. They have to carry their own oxygen, their own everything. So in a vacuum, they dare not open a hatch because all their oxygen would escape and fill the available space. Isn't that apparent?
Yeah, it seems like they're laughing. You know, again, I pointed this out last time we talked about Thunderfoot. So when he's giving this example with his tumble dryer, he's got a picture of Earth in space, and he's describing the thermodynamics laws that need to be applied to the equipment required to keep men out in space. Now, while he's saying all this, he's got a picture of Earth in violation of natural law, with gas pressure clung to the outside in a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, not filling the space. We move on?
Yep.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Scientific evidence of what?
Scientific evidence of what?
The reification fallacy that is gravity. Turning the mathematics of something which does not exist into something physical. You know, you can think of it as a force. That reification fallacy. Gravity.
Well, you said it right there. They have admitted that it's not a force. So how could there be any scientific evidence of being a force?
There isn't. It's just reified into existence by Muppets.
Sorry.
I'm saying, if it used to be a force, wouldn't it just continue to be a force? They wouldn't have to say, "Oh, now it's not a force." To me, that makes no sense. If it was actually a force in the first place, it would have just been continuing to do so. They wouldn't have had to change it and say, "No, that's not a force." Now we call it the bending and warping of a conceptual medium. Yeah, that works better. Math. That's not even in the same geometry that we live in. That works.
If you can't prove it in physical reality, then just keep it in the maths. Keep it in the abstract. It's far easier. Don't create a bridge like Al-Biruni did between the reification and mathematics. Don't do that. Just keep it in the mathematics. Keep it in the pseudo-Riemannian force space that doesn't exist. Much easier.
Can you solve for it numerically or no?
Yes, you can solve it from numerically, but you can't solve it numerically.
Okay, that clears that up. Thanks.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Nope.
Not using the scientific method.
Nope. Seat of the pants, guesswork.
Michio Kaku always seems to have a nice wry smile when he's saying things like that. Have you ever noticed? Seems like a happy chap.
I mean, when he's saying things like, in science, we always say that you make observations, you have a theory, you make more observations, and it's a very, very tedious process. Wrong. Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork. End quote.
He seems like such a happy guy when he's saying that. Oh, no, it's just guesswork.
He's literally smiling when he says it.
Yeah.
He laughs. He's like, yeah, nobody that I know of in my field uses that. What are you, crazy?
Yeah, wait, the empirical method, the one that establishes cause, we don't use that. We're not using empirical method. No.
Surely you just.
You must be joking. We can be off by a factor of, what's the factor?
10 to 120th power.
When they play that clip out, he puts the number on screen. He's like, all these zeros just constantly scrolling down. Same goes for Dr. Becky. These people don't know what science is. She thinks it's a wondrous thing, science, because nobody knows the answer. Might change. Like, no. Scientifically established data is empirical. You've either validated or invalidated that which you presumed at the hypothesis stage caused an effect you observed in nature. Then you go forth and perform systematic experimentation, either you or lots of other people who follow in your footsteps, to validate that which you assumed the cause was as the cause. And once you have done that, you have empirically validated it as the cause of the effect. That's science. It's not wondrous, it's empirical. It doesn't leave you not knowing, it leaves you knowing. But these people like Becky, Dr. Becky, I'm hesitant to call her that, don't have the slightest clue what science actually is. She thinks it's doing stuff on a computer.
I think these self-admissions from Michio Kaku and others is to protect them. Because they could say, well, I said we could be off 10 to the 120th power, so I was off.
Yeah, they're telling you. Yeah, it's a reification fallacy. Quote, you can think of it as a force, end quote. George Musa, 2019. He's telling you. They're all telling you. Yeah, we don't use the empirical method. Yeah, it's guesswork. But that doesn't set off alarm bells for any of the religious zealots that think that they've got a sky vacuum. No. Oh, well, of course it's guesswork. That's acceptable. He's told us so. The man in charge said it was okay.
Well, quote, usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. However, in cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science. End quote, Michio Kaku.
Yeah, they're telling you.
Yeah, at least he's honest.
Well, almost sounds like bragging about it at this point.
Yeah, because he knows. He knows. He's not stupid. And he's telling you. It's only down to those people who perpetuate the lie. Because who are they lying to? We've established all of this in the last couple of months. Who are they lying to? Well, themselves. Who's the they that perpetuates the nonsense of the globe? Well, anybody that perpetuates it. And normally you can tag it down to particular parts like Andrew Thomas Young, specific details that might work their way into the rhetoric of other people who lied to themselves. But when you get back to the original source material like Andrew Thomas Young, he tells you, we're taking geometric considerations. Not we've got a geometric horizon. Not we're measuring things because light is bending. No, we measure it all on a flat plane. But then we just take consideration of it being a globe. So they've told you. So when you read that and just say, oh, that makes it okay then. No. You can then either accept it as the philosophy that it is, or continue to reify it lying to yourself and telling everybody else like us that you're stupid for not reifying it into the religious belief you hold and perpetuate. So the they is you. If you're currently telling yourself you're on a globe, and when you finally come to the realisation that that's total nonsense, it's just existing in maths, who's lied to you? You lied to yourself. You could have done a bit of research, and when you dug, like we have, and showed you, you'd see that they've told you it all along, that it was just a model, heliocentric model, right? Well, models aren't something you can stand on in physical reality. Just conceptualizations. They told you from the start. But you lied to yourself. You were foolish. You weren't deceived. You deceived yourself because they told you it was a model all along.
Yep.
That concludes the housekeeping. Bloody hell. How long was that housekeeping? 41-minute housekeeping before I got to the first super chat shout out. Shout out to Al Junkie. Says, live on a ball on holiday, question mark. Re-if vacation fallacy. Hey, Brian, thank you very much for the super chat, Al Junkie.
Re-vacation.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Brian.
Go, Brian, go. Go.
Come on, Brian.
He did say hello. I heard him.
Yeah. I actually have a question if you're not talking about anything specific.
Go ahead.
Something I was asking Adam and I was asking QE last night. You know Einstein's theory of general relativity, where gravity is an effect due to the curvature of space-time by matter. Now, I can't at this present time, I haven't come across any information that says that this effect differs with the size of the mass. As in, it's an effect. Like, the horizon is the same effect, regardless of what it looks like today or tomorrow. It's the same visual effect. So, if this effect of gravity is caused by the curvature of space-time by matter, does the effect change in strength? I don't know if you can change the strength of an effect. Does the effect change in strength due to the size of the mass? And the reason I'm asking that is, if there isn't proof within Einstein's theory, not what ballers might say or someone else might have added to it, unless there's proof within what Einstein actually said about his theory and laid forth about his theory of general relativity, then technically, if you accept Einstein's theory of general relativity, then you're automatically a moon landing denier. Because on the moon, people were bouncing around in their narrative. You understand what I'm saying?
Sort of.
What?
I'll just do a shout out to Rakia Life. Thank you very much for the super chat, Rakia. I won't read it. Carry on, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is, if it's an effect caused by the curvature of space-time by matter, then the effect would be the same on the moon as on Earth and on everywhere else. It's just an effect caused by this curvature of space-time by matter. Is there any evidence to support that the effect would change in strength in accordance with the size of the mass? So Earth is a bigger mass in that belief.
Yeah, so straight away, the first problem in your question is what's mass?
Yeah, that was exactly what Einstein said to me. Oh, sorry, Einstein said to me. Sorry, that's exactly what QE said to me. But I understand that, right, that mass is not clearly defined. But the point I'm making is, would it be in direct violation of the claim of the moon landings, considering the fact that they show these guys supposedly on the moon and at less weight due to a less gravitation?
Maybe someone else. I do see your connection now because you've explained it clearly, but that's a tangent that I would never take to debunk the moon landings. So I do see your point, and does it work? Well, I can't answer the question, and it's for the same reason I gave you before. If you say, why does something that is undefined cause the bending of a fourth dimensional conceptual medium? Why does that happen? And if that is the case, that this undefined specific substance, if you want to call it that, causes the time in the fourth dimension to bend, how would that affect them? It's just convoluted cluster screw. Just space is fake. You can't have gas pressure without a container. The Earthrise picture shows an Earth in violation of natural law with gas not filling the space. Therefore, all those pictures are fake. The moon landings did not happen. You can't travel through a fake medium. They claim to have gone through the wardrobe. It's the metaphorical equivalent of travelling through the Narnia wardrobe. So, no, they haven't been to space through a medium of a vacuum. That's a lie. That's how I debunk it. Does the undefined mass causing the conceptual medium of space-time bending debunk the moon landing? Maybe, if you work that convoluted argument to a fine point. Maybe. It's much quicker to just debunk the medium they claim they travel to get there, though.
So I understand. I understand from a debating point of view what you're saying. 100% agree. No doubt about it. You just end the argument there and then. But I was just pointing out the contradiction that anyone on the border side that would, if they can't prove that there's a difference in the strength of the supposed effect of gravity due to a differing size of mass, then then that means they're in violation of the moon. It's just a big contradiction they have then. I mean,
Actually,
then people are in contradiction of moon landing.
I do see your point.
You're hooking it on a technicality. Well, if you don't do that, and yeah, because you can do that in every part of it, of course, because that's what the globe model is, then yeah, the more mass it has, the more space-time is bent, causing the supposed gravity, which you can think of as mass being attracted by mass, but it's basically not defined. That would be the answer.
Precisely, Arwen.
Did you Einstein, or is that from you?
Did you hear what Arwen just said? Because he said it much more concisely than I did.
Yeah, I understood what Arwen said, but like ballers will say the same thing to me, similar to what Arwen said. But is that defined by Einstein, or is that someone else putting their stamp on it?
It's defined by Einstein.
May I add to this?
Go ahead.
Anytime you beg the question, they can make up stuff. So just because they can't define it for you today, based on your question, Brian, they'll find a way to reify it and make it up tomorrow.
Precisely.
I think what Nathan is saying is more precise, which is, let's talk about reality. You're dealing with 4 dimensions and a conceptual medium called time. So what are you saying time does?
Exactly. So what 10th Man's saying is, Brian's working within the mathematics, he's working within the abstraction and saying, does this not work within their own abstraction? And what 10th Man's saying is, well, I'm pointing out Nathan saying that just bring it back to reality. Let's not worry about whether or not it works in the abstraction, because, yeah, they'll figure out a way.
Look, as far as debating goes and everything else, I 100% agree. I'm not even disagreeing with that you're saying. It's just, my point was, it just throws a spanner in the works for them. It's like,
no, but see, you're using...
One second, Tent. Just let me finish what I'm saying. The thing that they have to accept now, because they have to let go of Newtonian or Cavendish era, right? The thing they have to accept now goes in direct violation of their supposed moon landings and NASA.
No, I agree.
It doesn't matter to me, because from a debate point of view, yeah, I wouldn't debate that in that way.
But how?
If the effect is no different, right? According to Einstein.
Based on what? The effect is no different. Based on...
I'm saying if the effect...
Not defined enough here?
I didn't say definite. I didn't make the claim. I'm not making any claims about it. I'm saying if the effect can't be shown within what Einstein wrote about it to be different in accordance with the different sizes of different masses, then that means that what people were shown about the moon landings is in direct violation of Einstein, and he's in direct violation.
All right, I see where you're getting at. I got a better one though. How about his field equations can't even handle the moon as a separate mass?
This was Brian's point, Arwen. Brian was the one who started that. You realise that, right?
Oh.
Yeah, it's Brian's point. That's one of Brian's points.
But I think that the equation itself is more of a hint, like there can't be a mass there in the math. But then, yeah, the whole Newton and Einstein situation.
Hold on, just 1 second, Arwen.
It is like a paradox enclosed between 2 explanations, and they just carry it around together, but it's never completed. That's what it's become. It never closes, but they always use it anyway.
Just 1 sec. Did you want to add something, Mies Poo? Because I'm having to constantly close the Discord line because you just sat with your mic open eating cereal or something. Do you want to add something?
Sorry.
Can you pop yourself on mute, please? Brian, did you
Nathan,
want to...
I'm in Discord. I got something to say. Sorry.
I just want to see if Brian's got something he wanted to conclude with. He's right. It doesn't work within their I was going to say reification, but it's not. It's within the abstraction it doesn't work. That's Brian's point. He's saying you can throw a spanner. If they must beg the question and work within this abstraction, then he's saying, well, I can still throw a spanner in the works. That's what he's basically saying.
Yeah, I can't say it's a worth having as an argument. I mean, debating with. I mean, obviously, what you're saying from Virgo just debunks the whole lot. Forget it. I understand that totally. You're totally correct. I was just pointing out some stuff to do with Einstein and their contradictions. I actually even have something else, but I won't go into it now. Maybe a bit later. But I'm going to be driving, so I might hear what's being said, and I'll get back a little bit later. Okay. Thanks, Nathan.
No, thank you.
Before
Paul, did you want to?
Before Paul, okay.
Go, Paul. Go. Paul? Got nothing from you, Paul. Alrighty then. Go ahead, 10th man.
All right. Mic check. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Arguing within an abstraction can go on forever because they just make stuff up as it goes. There's nothing to prove. You can't prove it. It's out there. So why even get into an argument?
I'm in Google Hangouts now. Sorry.
All right, Paul, you can come in now.
Okay, sorry. That's better.
Before you do, Paul, hold on. That was an excellent point. Sorry, I just want to reiterate what 10th man said. It was the best point so far. If you're working within the abstraction, and paraphrasing what 10th man just said, it can go on forever because it's not reality. So yeah, absolutely correct, 10th man. Go ahead, Paul.
The only thing I would say is that their argument is going to be it's the amount of matter or mass, right? It's any amount of matter. If you have the same volume of gold as you would as the same volume of aluminum brick, they're exactly the same volume. According to their rhetoric, the gold would have a more gravitational force than the aluminum would. So it's not the volume that's the issue within the rhetoric. It's the amount of, or the density, or whatever you want to call it, of the substance.
It's the distribution of the mass, which is undefined.
Right. So, but that's where they would go. They would go like the gold would have more gravitational force than the aluminum with the same volume.
Alrighty then. So, I know Brian's just said, yeah, I understand. I just want to work within the reification. I keep saying that. Within the abstraction. I want to take it to the real level, to the where does this actually exist in our physical reality? Oh, right, the sky's not a vacuum. Therefore, moon landing's very easy to debunk. They definitely didn't traverse the wardrobe. I mean, space.
Yes, can I?
Visible from the moon, despite there supposedly being some air pressure there, according to the latest.
Don't forget, I was going to say, don't forget about the remix story now that the Earth's atmosphere actually extends out past the moon now. So there's always that.
Right. Originally, I think they used it as an excuse as why there weren't any stars, because the atmosphere requires that and blah, blah, blah. Well, how does that work when there is now some atmosphere there? You know? Like these little details.
Well, it still doesn't work because they're supposedly in a tin can that's supposed to be in like 250 miles up that they can't see stars from. So again, do they see stars or do they not see stars? They can't decide. So.
Yeah, I was going to say they can't even decide that. Depends which astronaut you ask. Sometimes they're as bright and as amazing as they could possibly be. Sometimes it's so pitch black you can't see anything. Depends who you ask.
So maybe it's just personal. Maybe one
guy you could ask, he will say both. Hatfield, I believe, said one time it was bright as
Collins.
And then the other time said it was black as black. So they can't even decide without.
Can I bring it back to the atmospheric refraction at the beginning of the show we were trying to talk about?
Depends. Got any proof of R?
Yeah. So QE put up the atmospheric refraction and the 5 effects of it, or, let me just mention them: miraging, looming, towering, stooping, and sinking. So when they're going through this, they have to stick to what those things are. So when I go to looming and sinking, it's talking about something sinking in relationship to the horizon, so it'd go below the horizon. And when it comes to looming, it's something in relationship to the horizon, and something that's below the horizon is loomed above the horizon. Now, these ballers who come on this show trying to tell us that the horizon itself is being affected by any one of these refraction points are missing their own schooling.
You want a quote?
So,
quote
well,
from
I
Rumpus. Rumpus, 2017. You know it's looming because of its position with respect to the horizon. End quote, Rumpus, 2017.
Woo-hoo. Yep. Yeah, the apparent horizon is looming above the geometrical horizon that you can't see.
Yeah, exactly, Alwyn. We covered this earlier, and I was quick to point out that the transition, the bridge in Andrew Thomas Young is where he derives a second horizon. Now, we only have one horizon. An apparent position, meaning you can see it where the sky meets the land or sea. That apparent position is apparent for two reasons. One, you can see it. Apparent meaning you can see it. Two, apparent meaning not actual, because the sky doesn't actually touch the land or sea. But as soon as you have a second geometric, quote-unquote, horizon, that's not a position that's visible, not apparent, and isn't demarcating either sea, land, and sky, then it's not a horizon. We only have one horizon. It's just not the geometric horizon in their maths. That only exists in maths.
Always look for the double speak segue when they say things like, but in the real world, or we must talk about geometric considerations for a curve. They always tell you.
Well, Chocolate Kiwi is quoting Andrew Thomas Young here. Looming, the appearance above the horizon of a distant object that would be normally be hidden below it. The effect is caused by unusually large terrestrial refraction. And what is terrestrial refraction based on?
7/6 of the radius value, which would give you a geometric horizon. And with that, I'll say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. As I say, unfortunately, if you're watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Rumpus is in the chat saying,
yeah.
I did say the horizon is being loomed. I just said that the objects are being loomed more.
What?
Yo.
Looming.
Looming over what?
Let's just quote him again. Let me just quote him again. You know it's looming because of its position with respect to the horizon. That's end quote. I've got it trimmed out.
He says that he can see that the horizon is looming as well, but the objects are looming more.
Yeah, it's fractal.
As I say, Zanuck and Rumpus can just make it up as they go along.
They have to keep the fairy tale space monkey religion, right?
Well, the religion itself doesn't. They have no choice but to do it.
Trademark.
All my refraction math was done on a plane surface. Now let's turn to the next page to the curved surface that we're gonna imagine, and now we're gonna do these imaginary maths. Like even the model itself does it. These people that represent this model do it, so they have to do it.
Well, how come A.T. Young didn't run into the looming and super looming while he was doing the refraction studies? Why did he just do it on the flat Earth and then say it was all this other space monkey religion garbage?
Because he hadn't yet met Rumpus, who was to show him the way and the light.
Well, no. What I'm trying to say is, when you, as Nathan said, when you research their stuff, you find out like your Michio Kaku quote. I mean, he pretty much is saying everything I'm telling you doesn't hold water, after he says by what factor he could be wrong. And he's got a PhD and he's got all his degrees in that field. But he says we're going to be off by 120 power. But in science, you can't even be off by 1. Right? I mean, he's telling you. So all these guys are confessing.
My favorite part of that quote, though, is that he distinguishes that there is a difference between science and cosmology. Right, because he says, in science, if we're off by a factor or 2, that's bad. But in cosmology, right? So he did the little trick. Now let's go into this crap, cosmology, where we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120.
Right. And that's exactly the point. They're telling us. Andrew Thomas Young tells us when we read it. George Musser tells us when we read his material. Michio Kaku tells us. Neil deGrasse Tyson tells us. And then these people still take what they tell us and stay in their space monkey religion because they got to keep reifying and denying the confession. They can't work that way.
Well, that's a complete admission that cosmology isn't even science.
I mean, who's gonna? When I ran across that quote by Andrew Thomas Young, that all Rumpus, all of his refraction studies, calculations, even better, came from a plane, a flat Earth. That was enough. He has never gotten any refraction calculations based on the globe or anything like that.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan. Can you present me for just a few seconds? I just want to say, I call it again. Look at what the prismatic fractal-looming chameleon is saying.
What does it? I can't read it. It's too small. Can you read it out?
This is not the horizon you are looking for.
Oh, yeah. This is from ages ago as well, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
This is not the horizon you're looking... Oh, did you add that? Hold on. Let's just get clarity. Have you added that recently?
Well, I added it, but it was still back then.
Ah, fair enough.
But yeah.
But you're right, the prismatic fractal looming chameleon.
It was definitely not this year and last year, so...
So would I venture to guess, Arwen, this is Boy George science you're showing us?
No, this is prismatic fractal looming chameleon. This is how refraction...
Arwen, you missed it.
...can solve everything. Yeah,
he didn't miss it.
Some jobs I don't want to get, 10th Man.
Yeah, I was going to say, he didn't miss it. He's just saying, no, take this seriously, 10th Man.
Yeah. Sort of. But this was my envisioning in how, we got actual refraction effects and QE demonstrated them all. And then you got prismatic fractal looming, and then it can do all kinds of weird things and hustle around and change the horizon.
Tough man, how dare you not take my chameleon that's speaking over here seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop it now.
That's good. It's spot on, isn't it? You know, they can do anything they like. 10th Man made it nice and clear. You had the best point of the show, 10th Man. They can go forever in their bullshit nonsense, just so stories based on maths. As long as you stay in there begging the question, abstraction, they can make it up as they go along.
Yeah, and my personal style is not to do that because my time is important and their time is important. So why are we wasting time on made-up stuff? So when I encounter people either here or in my UK channel, which are the only two I go to basically, and there's a baller, it's like, come on, let's talk about things in reality. Let's talk about things that can be proven. And the minute the first one stumbles, it's over. And so they want to keep stumbling and making up stuff. It's like, you're wasting my time. Will you concede the point, at least before we go on to the next fairy tale that I'm going to ask you to concede after I show you some proof that it doesn't exist in reality? So they want to keep talking about these fairy tale arguments, and then when you kill one, they don't concede. And before you could even get them to concede, they're off to the next one. They don't concede. And before you can, and on and on and on. And I personally don't like wasting my time that way. Now, others like to beg the question and play with the mouse like a cat. That's when I, tune out, and I'm going to go do some farm work.
Yeah, there's better things to do. I mean, on that vein, unless there's a new argument that comes up, the current policy of what use is Rumpus and Zanuck, and people like that in general, actually, what use are they to us? Well, there's no new arguments. It's been 7 months since the Black Swan dropped. So until there's a new argument, they literally have no use to us anymore, right? What use are they?
They're not. When I talk to normies, which I do a lot, they concede. When I'm wrong, I concede.
Oh,
but these guys never concede.
Talking about which, I have to make a concession. I made an error, Nathan. You actually felt it. But I looked through the data, and it seems like I forgot about doing this May 1st this year. So I did actually add it on later. Shit.
That's all right. No, I thought you'd already conceded that. That was the impression I got. Don't worry about it.
I wasn't sure when, but yeah, I checked.
Doesn't matter. The sentiment's the only thing that matters. I mean, it doesn't matter. The fact that I instinctively thought, oh, did you put this on the prismatic fractal looming chameleon 2 years ago? And then it's like, no, of course he didn't. But so what? Who cares?
All right. Just wanted to...
You just don't want to seem dishonest. I get it. Fair enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got you, Arvin. You did say it. You're fine.
All right.
So when we cite their person on refraction, Andrew Thomas Young, they don't even agree with Andrew Thomas Young. At that point, we have to say, you're not even agreeing with Andrew Thomas Young. Why are you making stuff up? And they won't even concede that.
Because they want to lie to themselves. But as I say, for the people who've
did Andrew Thomas Young tell them that they're using the classical terminology for looming, that they should just call it standard refraction? Isn't that what Rumpus said himself?
Rumpus said he talked to Andrew Thomas Young, to the best of my memory, and that only works in super looming.
super looming.
That's like when you go to a drive-thru and you say, supersize my burger, my fries, my drink, supersize it.
But you're right, normies seem to concede, so that Spider Daddy guy seemed like a relatively normal guy. And a couple of go-arounds on a few of the points, maybe, but that was all it took, and then he conceded. Now, the fact that he doubled back isn't a surprise. It's not like that's just going to be a shock to us, right? But it doesn't matter. At the point that you can't go anywhere and you realise your argument's fallacious, or you've accepted and repeated it if I forced you to. No, we didn't have to do that with that guy. At the point that he understands things that he's got a reasonable grasp of, in that case the second law of thermodynamics, he's not going to suddenly start fighting against natural law because he's not an idiot. Now, the people who've got absolutely no accountability, like Rumpus and Zanuck, they will fight against natural law. They'll claim that entropy and the second law are separate things. That's the kind of nonsense we have to deal with from those types of people. Now, fair enough, if you want to try and perpetuate that, that's what the debate is about. If there's a new argument, like the Black Swan, obviously they're welcome to come and try and punt their nonsense. And their nonsense, if it wasn't punted here, we'd never hear, we do not see the geometric horizon, it only exists in maths, etc., etc. So for things like the Al-Biruni focus, yeah, they can come in and they can try and obfuscate their way around it a few times. But once that's happened, it's like, well, what use do we have of you now? We've heard your arguments, we've heard your rebuttals, you're not offering anything new, we've reached the point where your own side's saying, oh, you're useless. No, they're just obfuscating so much that it's becoming apparent and obvious to everyone watching. Because they've got nothing. So if they've got nothing, what use are they? Now, newbies who want to discuss old business, gas pressure without a container or whatever, like Spider Daddy, more power to you. But why clog up the airways with the same obfuscation over and over again with the same old tired arguments that they've not given rebuttals to?
Yeah, exactly. I'll give you an incident. I shared a little bit last time, but I'll go in more detail. I had two guys I was talking to here on the property. They're working on the power pole. And it came to gas pressure without a container. And, obviously got propane tanks on the property. And they all agreed that to have pressure, you got to have an enclosed container. They even said it must be enclosed. I said, well, then how do you explain Earth's atmo? And because he said sphere, and I said, well, see how they got this program, atmosphere? So they're already begging the question, we live on the globe. He says, oh, I see your point. So you see, it's very congenial conversation going on here. And so I said, so atmo plane, I can't even say that. Really, I just say atmo. And he says, okay, that's fair. So then this atmo that's right next to a sky vacuum, how's it been contained? Since you just agreed that it takes an enclosure to create pressure. He thought about it, and he said, well, what about Jupiter and some of these gas giants? And I said, well, what are you trying to say? And he's saying, well, obviously they're out there and they're contained. I said, wait a minute. That's what they want you to think by saying that. But the gases that we are familiar with here on Earth, if you put them next to a vacuum, what would happen? He says, well, they will disperse into available space. I said, let's deal with our gases before we deal with that fallacious thing, that made up story of a gas giant in outer space. He says, yeah, but maybe that gas has a different element to it. I said, that's fine. Let's deal with the gas we know of, our gas. Can it stand next to a vacuum and contain itself? He said, no.
Right. But when it gets to the sky vacuum that I'm presupposing, and the gas giants that I've never been to, or anybody's ever been to, having gas pressure in a vacuum, well, they all work. All of my presuppositions that I hold true work for those lights in the sky that are definitely also gas in violation of natural law. So because they work in violation of natural law, because I said they do, that means that we must be able to violate the same natural law that those lights in the sky that I've got no clue what they actually are, and I've decided are gas in a vacuum, in the same way they stay there, right? Because look, Jupiter's not dispersing, and it's obviously gas, isn't it? Is it? Who said it was gas again? You did.
Exactly. Oh, they got it. They you know what's great about taking the nice arguments that we've pummeled the troll ballers here is taking them to normies in a calm manner, and then they get it. And then you see cognitive dissonance. But their reaction to cognitive dissonance is not the same as Rumpus and Xanax. They don't double down on the fallacy. They say,
I don't see it. I don't see
right.
them. No, I don't describe them as having cognitive dissonance. No. On the first or second go around with Spider Daddy, yeah. With them, no. When the concluding point is reached, you can't let that be laboured. So keep the circle jerk going as long as possible so that the concluding point gets lost in the word soup that they're delivering. Not the conclusion highlighted, not them being held to task and made to concede. No. A reassertion of the original question that's just had 10 minutes debunking it from our side, and the acknowledgement never coming. Just reassert the same thing. You can go around in the same circle again. Make it seem like that circle didn't have a conclusion. That's what they're doing. That's not cognitive dissonance.
No, you misheard me. I meant the normies have cognitive dissonance.
Oh, the normies,
and they react. Yeah, and they react very normal to it. They go, wait a minute, you bring up a good point. Now, what do Rumpus and Xanax do? They just repeat it, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I don't know. I've seen a couple of examples of some cognitive dissonance in my face, like in real life, when brought, especially with the gas container, all of that, the gas pressure. It does happen. Like, you will see them every once in a while struggle very hard to try to respond to what you're saying, and you can kind of see them in pain a little bit as they come up with gravity and the whole universe is the container and shit like that.
We heard it this morning.
Well, this is
Neil's son.
This is my.
We heard it this morning.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say we heard it this morning, and so Neil's son was in cognitive dissonance, and rather than, because he's got two opposing views being held at exactly the same time, rather than accept that or concede it or ponder on it, he wants an explanation for our side of the story. In other words, the two positions that contradict each other, he wants to see which has got the most validity. So it's straight to, well, how do you explain the sky vacuum? Now that's a way of relieving the cognitive pain that the dissonance leaves you with when you've got two opposing positions being held at the same time. So rather than, as I say, dwell on, well, the sky can't be a vacuum then, it's, well, let's hear the other side. How is it being contained? What's your explanation for how the gas pressure is not just building up and continually rising, etc., etc., etc.? None of which, as I say, needs explaining. once you've pummeled the point that you require containment to have gas pressure. But like I say, dwelling on that's going to leave you going, well, that means we're not in a sky vacuum. That's what you end up doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where you're at, because when,
my head is deep pressure.
When he's asking you, when he puts you into that position where he's asking, well, why doesn't it fill the container? So are you saying there's a container?
Let's not dwell on that.
So have we moved into that part of the discussion already?
Exactly. Move past the bit that causes the cognitive pain. I mean, I've left it on screen. I paused it on the background video. But here we are with gas pressure being depicted in a cartoon format. And it's got all these arrows showing that the gas will hit the side of the container and bounce off it. And that's the directions it travels. Now, what's going to happen if there isn't a container? Well, the white area that's around the box, that's where the gas that formerly hit the container and stayed inside the container, it's just going to keep going into this area. Now, metaphorically, if this wasn't a cube, it was a circle, and inside it, like a balloon, you've got the same thing going on, and then you remove the skin of the balloon, all that's going to happen is all of these gas particles, which are moving at high speed, are going to go in all directions and fill the available volume they have to fill. Now, picture Earth claimed to be taken from space with all those clouds on the outside of it. That's high-pressure gas. And there's no containment around it. What is around it is a massive amount of space for it to fill. Now, natural law, second law of thermodynamics, also known as entropy, would dictate that the gas, as depicted here, is just going to fill the available volume. Precisely what Earth, if it was a ball of gas in a sky vacuum, would do. We'd have no gas to breathe. Obviously, we have gas pressure, therefore we must, it's a necessary antecedent-consequent relationship, we must have containment. What's that? Why aren't we increasing it? I don't care. Well, why have we got gradient? Don't care. The sky's not a as claimed at the cost of 52 million a day.
If you blow up, sorry, 1 second, Ted. One of the best physical demonstrations against their argument of the gas being a gradient, besides the fact that we know it's nonsense, is a blowing up of a balloon. If you blow up a balloon, then it will have more pressure in it than the 14.7 psi we walk around in, that we're told is we walk around in. But the pressure won't be a huge amount more. It will be more. Depends on how much you blow it up. But as soon as you stick a pin in that thing is going to blow. Now, the difference between 14.7 psi and 10 to the minus 17 torr would be phenomenal. Whereas the difference between the 14.7 psi and the 17 or whatever pressure is in the balloon when you blow it up, the difference between those two would be very, very small in comparison to the difference between 14.7 and 10 to the minus 17 torr. So if you pop a balloon, yeah, exactly. It even makes a noise because of the balloon.
Yeah, even if you take the difference to be, it's still insignificant by comparison to 10 to the minus 17 torr versus 14.7. But if you say a tyre with, I don't know, 44.7, you've got it at 30 psi according to the gauge. Well, if that tyre explodes, if you have a blowout, number one, you hear it as the gas rapidly fills the available volume and vacates the tyre. Well, that's, again, a tiny difference in terms of the pressure and what happens when you've got something at a higher pressure and it no longer has containment. It fills the available space. Simple. It's entropy. Very well established law of nature.
Yeah, my point in all this is cognitive dissonance is key to any debate, especially when you're coming on this topic. So if you're in the debate and your argument is not causing cognitive dissonance, then you're not debating properly. Meaning they've got to have two opposing thoughts in their head. Now, which one is true? This is a key point in a good debate. The one that's true is the one that shows you the evidence. So you follow the evidence and you put the two thoughts and see which evidence points to it and which one doesn't have evidence. And this is how you're going to get the normies, and this is how I'm doing it, It's I'm saying you can't have two opposing thoughts. That's cognitive dissonance. They agree. And then they throw it back at me. Well, then how do you explain this and that? I go, wait a minute, we're not even there yet. What if I say I don't know? But can you have gas pressure, pressure meaning the key word, without containment? He says no. I said, so what do we know for sure? And then they just look at you and they say, well, from what you're saying, you can't have it next to space because it will dissipate. I go, exactly. And that's enough.
Something interesting I read this morning. I was listening to Jose's show from Saturday. There was a presentation on there with the 3 surveyors from their side. Now, what they were doing was they were calling it measuring the radius. And they were using the Eratosthenes system, right? Now, when I asked them that personally, they wouldn't give me an answer. The only answer, I got one answer, one word, and that was from the main surveyor, and he said the word measurements. Right, that was it. When I asked them for the origin of the radius value. But yet they went on to Jose's the other day and started begging the question, right? Pre-assuming a globe. Exactly the exact thing that me and other people have been saying to them. What was interesting was Rumpus was in the chat, and Rumpus was saying it to him. He says, but by doing this, you have to pre-assume a globe, because you have to pre-assume a size and a distance to the sun and that the Earth is a globe in the first place. You know, that's what Eratosthenes did. He had to pre-assume a lot of stuff. So they were using the Eratosthenes method, which is not even the accepted one. It's Al-Biruni is the accepted one. But they were using Eratosthenes, and Rumpus was in the chat actually saying it to him. And like they kind of did kind of address Rumpus, but then they said they'd have to have a separate hangout with Rumpus or some nonsense. Like Rumpus was literally fighting our fight. He was saying you have to pre-assume a globe for that. Like, I mean, how are you measuring it? Like,
he's never denied it.
What is your refraction? How are you calculating refraction? Sorry,
he's never denied it. He has never, ever denied it. So the justification is that, well, of course, we already know we're on a sphere. Therefore, presupposing the R value is perfectly acceptable. And that's something that's always been the case. Rumpus has never, ever, ever defied that particular standpoint. We already know we're on a sphere, therefore it's perfectly acceptable to beg the question. Now, I think he's done that because when we reached the point that we said, you're just begging the question, you're assuming the Earth's a sphere, you've assumed this R value, he just goes, yeah. And that seems like not a big deal. And he's always admitted it. So if you go back and find it, YouTube is often pointing out, here we go, here we are in 2014, Rumpus admits it. Anthony asks him directly, are you assuming this R value in the maths? Yes, I am. Now, does it get dwelled on at that point? No. Has it been dwelled on? Yeah. But he's never going to be in a position where he's going to say, no, I've not assumed Earth's a sphere. When of course he is. That's all they ever do. It's the basic argument that they can have here. All they can do is beg the question. So to deny that would be very foolish, because you're going to get caught out, and then, you know, he'd lose all credibility in terms of fighting for the justification to assume the R value in the first instance. Hence, we've had to get to the point where we've debunked their presupposition. We have to debunk the R value itself, because they just justify by saying, well, we already know. In other words, use the argument which is against begging the question as the justification for begging the question. Well, I can beg the question because I can beg the question. I know it already. Therefore, I'm justified in begging the question. That's their argument. It's pathetic.
Yeah,
let's not forget Mick West, who came on and said the same thing. Yeah, we presuppose R. It's based on the standard model. That was in episode 200 something, 260.
Exactly. So the reason when you set the cat amongst the pigeons is when you show them that the assumption of the R value isn't justified, that you don't have a measurement to this R value, that it doesn't exist in reality. And when you get to them saying, well, it only exists in maths, that's game over. There's no way around that. But unless you can keep the circle of that conversation going indefinitely, so it seems like there isn't a conclusion. Well, that's their only current tactic.
It was funny because Rumpus was literally saying to them, no, I'm sorry, you're pre-assuming R. Because they were saying they were measuring the radius, and he was pointing out that R is pre-assumed in what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, that was good. He literally was in defiance of them. He was in defiance.
It's not in defiance. No. Rumpus will always toe the standard rhetoric line. He will never be in abject defiance. He'll double speak and contradict himself. Yes, we can see the geometric horizon. No, we can't see the geometric horizon. But in both statements, there's a geometric horizon involved in that, isn't there?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I was just pointing out that he on Saturday in the chat, he was literally asking them questions that they didn't want to be dealing with.
Brian, let me answer
what
that.
they were doing was pre-assuming. Go on,
answer that, Brian.
Go on, Ted.
Yeah, I heard that too. The reason Rumpus, in my opinion, did that is because all of his comebacks to us have failed miserably. So he tried it on them acting as us to see if he can get a new argument.
Maybe.
Well, I don't want to define his thoughts. I'm just pointing out that he was doing it. You know, I don't know why he was doing it.
I'm not divining his thought. I said, in my opinion, I clarified it. I heard it too, and I'm saying, wow, I can't believe he's saying this. I wonder why he's saying that. Why would a person who's argued with us to the whatever distance of fallacy can go, all of a sudden acting like us in a question? You wouldn't do that unless you wanted a better comeback.
No.
So I think
no.
To hear
That's not. No, you're wrong. You don't have to look very far. Sticks and shadows examples, all of them make it very plain that the R's being assumed. Often in the first statement, based on the assumption that the Earth is a sphere. He goes to his wells, or whichever version they're parroting, probably the wrong one. But the point is that the assumption is always very much plain in the rhetoric. So, for instance, Gary Awesome did a video claiming to debunk how you've got a sphere Earth when we're saying you haven't. And the first thing he did is quote that, and even in his own repetition of it, said, and he assumed the Earth's a sphere. And you're like, my God! But that's conditioning people to just accept it as being perfectly tolerable to automatically assume that the surface you're standing on is spherical. And you've got to keep that as the prevalent bit, because the main argument is to beg the question. It's the only way. Got to credit validation, boy. Again, every argument for the sphere will start with the presupposition you're on a sphere. So you've got to train people to just doggedly assert that that's perfectly acceptable.
No, I agree. But I didn't say that. I said Rumpus went on and said to them that they're doing that.
Yeah, he's got to train them. Look, just accept and be very bold about the fact that you're begging the question here. And we're assuming Earth's a sphere because we already know. Don't you know how to argue this? That's how you've got to have the mindset. If you're going to train people how to debate, tell them, here's your biggest weakness. We beg the question with every example. So rather than letting that become a weakness that people can nitpick with, declare it as a strength. We can automatically assume we're standing on a sphere. Power to the global people. That's what you need to do to win the argument. So that's what he's training them to do.
No, if it came from that viewpoint, you would be right. But based on how I picked up on it, is that he was saying to them, aren't you just begging the question that we live on a sphere when you say that? How do you get around that? He's looking for more help. He's doubting, is what I'm saying.
Maybe. I'd have to read it in absolute context.
Yeah, that's the way I took it. But Brian, when you heard it, how did you take it?
1 second, Ted. I'll come back in a second.
All right.
No worries. But as I say,
can I add something to this?
Go ahead.
Thanks. So they do always assume R, even in the face of the black swan, they assume it because they tell us that we can't see the geometric horizon. We know it's there. That's the assumption right there too. It's always there. It's got to be there, even though we can't see it, can't detect it. The black swan shows that it's not geometric. Still know it's there. So I think 10th Man, you're right. Rumpus is looking for more arguments because he's realizing that he's cooked. Really.
Sorry about that, Thanks. First of all, apologies. I should have listened to you better. You weren't divining his thoughts. What I would say about what I read, concerning Rumpus, was that it seemed like Rumpus was basically saying to him, it's kind of like, to me it sounded like Rumpus was saying, is that the best you've got? In so many words. It's like as if he was disappointed. Because he was even asking him, and how did you calculate your refraction? What did you use to calculate that? He was asking questions like that as well, but it was mainly about, from the comments I read, was mainly about
that's what I'm saying, Brian.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying, Brian. He was acting as us, and he wanted them to debunk us, but he was role-playing us.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was a bit like that. Yeah, it was like he was basically fighting our argument, but he was literally asking himself. That's what to me it felt like he was literally asking himself.
Well, the guy said, Rumpus has a lot of good questions. Maybe we should have a separate show and deal with all his questions, because Rumpus was throwing all of our arguments at them to a point, and they were saying, these are good questions, but we can't do it here. Maybe we should have a separate show. So I said, Rumpus, I said, you came here and got beat up. You take how you got beat up and throw it at your fellow ballers, and then they're saying, okay, let's have a separate show on this.
Interesting.
Yeah, why would they need a separate show? Why can't they answer it there? Sorry, Nathan. Right.
I'm more interested in why you're portraying him scraping the bottom of the barrel to scrape up a new argument. That's how you phrased it to me. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to hear it, Nathan. You have to hear the show how the people live were responding to Rumpus in chat. And it came across, I kid you not, that he was asking our questions that we asked Rumpus in the past, but now he's asking to his fellow ballers. Because he knows he can't overcome them himself. He needs help. He wants to hear what they say. That's the way it came across to me.
To me, it came across the same, actually. It seemed like he was looking for better answers from the surveyors than what they had to give.
Gotcha. I mean, what are you going to do? We've made the argument untenable for them. So this picture on screen, the original Black Swan image, debunks a geometric horizon, debunks Earth curve geometry, debunks R, debunks Earth curve. That's it. It's the end of the road.
It's over. It's done. Yeah. It's cooked. It's over. Finished. Bye-bye globe.
Can't do geometry without a geometric, physical, sphere edge, tangent point horizon, formerly known as Earth curve. Who's eating crisps in Discord? No, it's 10th Man.
I was turning a page. It's not crisps.
I think that's a fairly nice note to round out the show, unless anybody has got anything to add.
Well, one last thing. A sphere, a circle with dimensions. Question. Does it have a face? No. Face is on the flat surface. Does it have a vertex? No. Vertex is a point or corner of a shape. Question. Does it have curvature? Yes. Well, then show it to us.
Perfect. Did you want? Was there one more thing you wanted to add?
Einstein contradictory nonsense. More of it if you want to hear it, but it doesn't really matter if you're happy with how it is.
Yeah, go ahead. Feel free.
Okay, yeah, just it's nonsense, but I'll throw it out there. In the heliocentric rhetoric, your weight can supposedly change the further you get from Earth because you're moving away from a gravitational pull, but your mass never changes. Now, if I'm correct, didn't Einstein change the size of a metal part of an apparatus? There was something that was, I can't remember what it was. It was claimed to be an experiment that he was going against. I think it was something to do with the ether or something to do with light, but he was going against it. And it wasn't a proper experiment, but he was going against it. And how he went against it was he mathematically showed how during the experiment, that they called an experiment, this piece of metal actually got longer. So he basically, with mathematics, changed the mass of something. Right? And it was accepted.
Yeah,
now, define mass. Yeah.
It exactly took the words out of my mouth. And also, as you just eloquently demonstrated or described, you can reify this into existence or accept that all you're doing with that piece of metal is mathematically abstracting out its size and saying it's bigger. Well, nothing's changed. Same goes for Earth. if you eventually realise that you're not stood on a spherical surface flying and spinning in a sky vacuum, the world beneath your feet doesn't suddenly unfold from being a sphere. It was only your philosophy because you were working within an abstraction. And for Einstein, he can work within that abstraction that he's developed and then describe something that's a bit of a problem as being conceptually different by his standards. And his standards are all abstractions. So yeah, good point. Anything else anyone wants to add? Feel free.
I was going to add something. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
When I was listening to Rumpus on that show, we were all in the chat going, holy cow, Rumpus is, finding some humility, right? Because what he was saying was exactly right. They were using the wrong measuring tool. I mean, they got away from Al-Biruni when they've been fighting for Al-Biruni for 6 months. But they didn't want any part of Rumpus, right? Because he was making our points, which they don't want any part of us, but they treated him differently. Well, we'll have to have another show with you. With us, they would have called us idiots and said we weren't making good points. But with him, they immediately shut him down because they didn't want the audience to hear, the opposite view and how they were wrong or assuming basically is what they were doing. But it was very evident, very telling. Even some of the ballers that were in the chat was like, holy cow, I never knew this, or, didn't realize this, right?
The times they are a-changing. And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering audiences for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a day! What a lovely day!